object-oriented programming. I've and don't be so intimidated by that term, because all it means is that when we did that check, we created our own object, and we allowed an object to represent that form, and that gave us advantages. It allowed us to initialize the minute that object is being used certain values, and so it had a certain state before it even began, and we could even have things happen when we end the use of that any particular object. This is a class, which is like a cookie cutter to make objects, and we have properties of a class in that class. Check number. You could also have what are called methods when you have a procedure that's right in this code that, for example, if you had to calculate amount to be based upon who the payee is, like cut the amount in half, you could do that using a method, or you could even change it right here and say divide by 2, for example. Also, remember that we use these globals, and when we declare something global, all we have to do is put it in its own module, put public int current check or whatever the name of our variable is, and as whatever type it is. And we could use many such variables throughout our code. And best practice is to minimize the number of these global variables that you have, because anyone can change them. And we use this, now that once we had that object, we could create that object, and we could put in any values from our check anywhere that into that object, and have it all return back as one object. And I want you to remember this, because with get new check, I actually had, you're gonna need to make sure this line is in this function, because it will not work unless this line appears in the function. This is very important. I believe it may have been left out in an earlier scene. And next, we learned how we can work with a range, and we could even add to that range and reference that range back, and still have that range. You add information to that range and still have it dynamically expand as we add new items to that range on another sheet. And this is and we also had this concept that the data for a form or whatever should be in one place when possible. And also, I've shown you that we can calculate values, and we don't have to use formulas directly in our code as we did here. We can just calculate the value directly in our code. Less potential for a user to damage the way our code works if they're not able to change those formulas. And I want you to also notice, because you may need this at some time, since this line was very long, right after I finish the plus sign, all I have to do is put a space underscore, and it allows me to continue that line on more than one sheet. So I can say, if I got rid of that, look what happens. It's no longer a valid statement, but I'll put it back, and now this appears to the program to be one big line, just because of this space underscore that says continue on with this line. I showed you how you can click in this margin and you can stop your program at a certain point. And that way you're able to look and see how your program is running. And if you press F8, you can go step by step through your code. And finally, I showed you how we can even add controls directly onto our form, and we can switch in and out of design mode and to coding mode. I mean to the regular mode of running the application. I've shown you how the relationship between the macros that are recorded and how you can use the information you can learn from that code by looking at it and seeing how the program works. And if you can do, sometimes you'll have errors in your code, and the problem is you couldn't even do that without code. You couldn't do it in regular life when you're just a regular user using your program. And so your program often can't do it because what you're asking is something that can't be done. So if you can do it in the natural world, it'll be able to do it in the code world. Shows you the message box and how to use error handling on error. And you can resume or resume next, or you can exit your code. Showed you that you could use help. If you don't know about sort, you can find out by looking through all of these selections. And finding which one. There's the sort method. In general, you can, from what we taught you, we've showed you how code hints even work and how it'll help you program. And you can sometimes find something that looks interesting and then go into help and find out what it really means. A tremendous help. And I even showed you how the first basics of using forms and how we used the workbook, the events of the workbook to show this form, and even to have the time this on time and now execute a certain code module procedure. And we could even create a new form. Insert user form. And if we wanted to, we could build our check all straight from in a form. You could have the check number there. You could have that there. Put your label, pay to the order of. Create your memo field and your signature field. And the same principle work, but you would pass an object to this, and allow that object to just take the properties of the object, and it would work essentially like it did on the actual form. In many cases, and you would not have to worry about protection as much in there. And it works, the process generally works about the same as it did on our sheet. Our sheet is really just the type of form itself. And and a couple more things. You can set your project properties. You can give your project a name. You can lock all of this so no one can see it. If you enter in a password, you have to enter in this password for your user to be able to go to VBA and see the code. Not going to show that. I just want you to be aware of what you can do. And also on toolbars, you can change what toolbars appear. Let's say data isn't of any use to me. I can rearrange the commands. I can go to menu bar. In data, I can delete and keep a user from making a table. And watch, data has nothing up under it. Likewise, I can create a toolbar. I can view toolbars, customize. I can say new and give this toolbar a name. Let's say my check book app, and then I can add buttons. For example, I can say since I have macros, I can say custom menu item, or I can use a button and I can drag it onto there. And then I can assign a macro to that button. For example, create insert check. I can say OK. Or I can say I can change the image on that button to be something that looks like an insert or something that's more relative. I can say image and text. Edit the button, change how it looks, create my own custom look for the button, add more buttons. And I'm not meaning to go through all of the things that we can do, but just showing you that these are some of the options you can use to make your application a custom application. And you see that it's dockable, and it can be just like these buttons on here. And this concludes our tape, and thank you for your patience, and just be sure to stop and pause and go back to any section that you want to learn how to do something even more effectively. And be sure to use the help system. Thank you.